Oh God! So yes, welcome to Rick's Garage. So in this episode we are talking about the coil springs on my Alfa Romeo GTV. Now, long story short, or as short as I can, I've not been happy with the way this car is handling since it was completely rebuilt, reassembled. Let me explain why. So since everything has been fitted brand new on this car, I went through a bit of a bedding in process with the Koni shocks. I put everything on full soft for around 400 miles. During that time, you know, I really wasn't happy. It was crashy, whilst at the same time there was lots of roll. I know that's something that you need to rectify with anti-roll bars, not necessarily the dampers. But yeah, I wasn't entirely happy. Then the next thing I did was I firmed up the shock absorbers. I put them on full hard on the back. I think it was a full turn on the front, and that actually transformed it. I was very, very happy. It handled like it was on rails. I was made up. Then I had a few comments on my channel on a couple of episodes ago, and a few people were saying, God, how are you running full hard? It's undrivable on country roads. And I responded, well, I seem to be quite happy with it. It's only a Sunday driver. But since then, I've had it on a few, you know, up and down bumpy country roads, and I've got to admit to you guys, you're right, it's undrivable. It's just too crashy, it's all over the road, it's just not compliant in the slightest. So what is the plan? What do I intend to do about it? Well, if there's anybody who knows a thing or two about Alfa Romeos, it is Alfaholics. I'm sure you've all heard of Alfaholics. They are wizards with Alfa Romeos. Back in the day, they do insist that the very best setup for these cars is actually the Koni Sport front shock absorbers, OEM rear shock absorbers, and OEM specification springs, coupled with the up-rated anti-roll bar kit. Now, obviously, I've already got a full setup or Koni setup. I'm going to stick with those personally, but what I am going to do is I'm going to remove the Eibach Pro springs, and I'm actually going to fit OEM specification springs, and that is what this video today is all about. Now, in the future, I do also intend to buy the up-rated Alfaholics anti-roll bar kit. I've heard of lots of you guys who have fitted those with amazing results. So yeah, OEM specification springs, which hopefully should make it a lot less crashy, more importantly, a lot more compliant. So yeah, I've got high hopes for this, and I hope it's going to work. So what I've got coming up now in the video is I'm going to show you guys the process of removing and refitting both rear and front springs. Once we've done that, we're going to come back and take this car for a drive, see how she performs. So without further ado, let's get on to the video. Okay, so let's get the new springs unboxed. End of the day, who doesn't love an unboxing video, right? So as you may or may not be able to see, these springs come from Alfa Shop. There's a lot to be said about Alfa Shop. I'm going to cover them more in a future episode, actually. But I absolutely love dealing with Alfa Shop. They're absolutely fantastic guys. What I love most about them is the prices are very fair. But not only that, they offer free, yes, free next day delivery, which is just absolutely fantastic. And on top of that, they offer 10% for Alfa Romeo Owners Club members, which is it's just fantastic. But yeah, Alfa Shop, well done to you guys. I absolutely love you. I've bought lots of stuff from you now. So yeah, let's get these things unboxed. Now, the springs that I've actually gone for, which is the springs that Alfa Shop offer, are the suplex ones, if that's the way you pronounce it. As you can see, I've got 2 fronts and obviously 2 rears in here. Let's put my knife away before I stab myself in the face. But yeah, these are the suplex springs, OEM specification, very well packaged as always from Alfa Shop. That's the 2 fronts, and in here I've got the rears. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, those are the rears, so that should give me a little bit more height back in the back. Now, this is another reason why I love Alfa Shop. They always send me free gifts, which is just you know, it's a fantastic touch. Yeah, honestly, if I lived around the corner from Alfa shop, I think I would be around there most days. I would certainly wouldn't hesitate in taking my car to them, that's for sure. But yeah, well done Alfa shop. Thank you for these springs. They have not given me these springs. I'd just like to say I have paid for them as a normal customer. But yeah, love to deal with Alfa shop. The suplex springs are the ones that I've gone for. So without further ado, let's get these bad boys onto the car.
So once again, the Alfa Romeo is up in the air. The first thing you need to do is place a jack under the inner spring pan bolt. And I actually broke my own rule here, guys. Unfortunately, the bolt would not pull out no matter what I tried, so I had to knock it out with a hammer and a punch. At this stage, just pull the bolt out, lower your jack, and the spring pan arm should lower straight down, and you should be able to pull the spring straight out from the socket, nice and easy. So now we need to transfer everything over, including the bump stop cups and the spring perches. As you can see, these bump stop cups are from Totally Alpha, made from stainless steel. The bump stops were actually cut down to accommodate the Eibach springs. Now that I'm fitting OEM springs, I need to fit new bump stops. Here's the difference between the OEM versus the Eibach springs. So the rubber spring perches are transferred across. The old bump stops were pulled out. These do take a considerable amount of force to pull out. New febby parts put back in, new bump stops. Easiest way to fit these guys I found is to put half of the bung in and then twist them in. Then once you're ready, guys, you need to remove these plastic perches to the bump stops before you put the springs in. Set your springs into place, set your jack underneath the inner spring pan arm, jack it up into place. Now I'm not going to lie here, guys, this video is edited, but believe me, I did have trouble getting that back into place. It did take me a good 10 minutes, but eventually I got it lined up and got the bolt straight back in, no problem. So as easy as that, one side is done. As you can see, a nice factory finish with the black springs in comparison to the red. I quite like it, to be honest. Last of all, don't forget to put your plastic rubber bump stop perches back in, and you're done. So now it's on to the other side.
Okay, so now we're on the front end. What I'm going to do first is just quickly explain the process. The first thing I'm going to do is unhook the brake line using this circlip right here. On the other side, I'm going to unhook the ABS sensor cable and also the brake pad wear sensor cable. And lastly, I'm going to undo the nut to the anti-roll bar drop link. After that, I'll be undoing the 3 30mm nuts holding on the top mount to the body. Then last of all is the 2 bolts holding on the hub to the upright. Then once that's all done, everything should come away without any issues at all, but we shall see how we go. So over to the bench. Okay, so what we need to do obviously is remove the spring from the shocker. Now the spring clamps that I use are these type, which are probably the cheapest type you can buy on the market ever. You probably get them for about a tenner online. I've had these things for absolutely donkey's years. Now as you may have noticed, one is a lot longer than the other. That is because many years ago I needed a piece of threaded bar for something, so I thought, oh, the spring compressors are cheap, I'll just chop those in half and I'll replace them. Well, I never ended up replacing them and I've still been using them exactly as they are. But yeah, you need to be careful using these guys. They can be dangerous in the wrong hands, but just take it easy. I've never had an issue. So yeah, that is what we're going to do now. I'm going to get the spring clamped up and then get the spring removed. So let's crack on with that. Just a little tip guys for these spring compressors, these things will take your paint clean off your springs. Not a good start when you're fitting brand new springs. What I normally do is put a piece of bicycle inner tube over the ends. As a cyclist, inevitably I do get punctures. I always save the inner tubes, and what I do is use them for jobs just like this. Just put them on, double them over, and that will protect the paint on your springs. A lot of garages don't bother doing this, but it is well worth the effort. So we're just going to move this dust cover. Now, one important thing, especially with Koni adjustables, is you may see some mechanics using a rattle gun or an impact to take these top nuts off. You shouldn't do it. It's fine for normal shock absorbers, but Koni adjustable, they actually specify in the manual not to do that with these. It's really important. Use a spanner. If I remember correctly, it is a 22mm and a 11mm. So yeah, 22mm over. Just crack that off. Shouldn't be overly tight. Okay. So So that is coming off now. And then they've got a washer, that top mount cup, if you like. Then we can remove the top mount. Then inside here, just before I do it, you've got that plate. Remove that. And inside there, you've got your bump stop. But yeah, anyway, we can now pull this spring off, move the shock absorber out of the way, then we can release the tension back off that spring. No marks on the springs at all. There is one mark on these from last time when I first put them on, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, if you use rubber on the end of your spring clamps, you should be fine. So yeah, now we need to reassemble everything again, but this time with the suplex springs. Okay guys, so I may have a little bit of an issue here. Now as you can see, there is a significant difference between the OEM specification spring and the Eibach spring. The overall difference once they're fitted to the car is actually only 20mm, but on the bench, as you can see, yeah, big difference. Now the difference between OEM springs and the lower end springs, they do have the exact same amount of coils, but the aftermarket springs are progressively wound, obviously to make them shorter, and that obviously also increases the spring rate, which obviously that's why they're a lot more firmer. But now the problem I'm going to have is obviously because the OEM spring is much longer, the coils are much further apart. I think I'm going to have a problem using my cut down spring compressor. Now what I have done, thankfully, is I've managed to borrow another set of spring compressors from a friend of mine. Luckily, I have actually been away into the house and I've actually ordered a new set of spring clamps. But for now, to get this job done, thankfully, a friend of mine has been good enough to lend me some spare spring clamps. Now, I'm guessing this is going to take a considerable amount of force, a considerable amount of clamping as well to make it short enough to go into the shock absorber to get the top mount on. But yeah, I think I'm going to take my time with this one. Let's crack on with it. So my impact has just decided to die on me, so now we've got to do it manually. Okay, let's see if we can do that nut up. My god, that spring took some tension in. So we're just tight on the end there now. Now we can undo those clamps finally. Wow. Okay, I'll tell you something. I really missed my impact then. Really missed the impact gun. I don't miss those days of doing these manually. Jesus. It takes an absolute age. Oof. Thank God for that. So that is one of two springs now fitted to the Koni Sport shocks. Now that put up a little bit of a fight. It took a lot of compression to get the OEM spec springs onto the Koni shock absorbers, but we got there in the end. Now yeah, that took a lot of compression. Now the most important thing, guys, as I've already mentioned, don't do these top nuts up with a rattle gun on the Koni Sport shocks because you may ruin them. Make sure you use a spanner. Now the only thing left to do is to get this back onto the car, which I am going to film, but I'm not going to film doing the other side of the car, otherwise this video is, you know, it's just going to be too long. What we are going to do in this episode is I'm going to take the car out for a drive, see what difference the OEM spec springs make in comparison to the Eibach springs. I'm expecting it to be a lot more compliant, much nicer, much smoother on the road. Not another moment to lose. Let's carry on, guys. So here we go, guys. What do you think? Back to factory ride height. Personally, I think this looks much better. Now, no offense to you guys who have got Eibach springs. Obviously, this is just my personal preference. I think this looks much better. I'm very happy in the looks department. Now, what I'm expecting is for this to be not quite night and day, but I hope that with these springs back on, it will be a lot less crashy. Because it'll be a lot more give in the suspension, it should be a lot more compliant. But more importantly, I don't want it to rub in the rear anymore. And also, if you've been watching my previous episodes, you will have known that this was actually running 4 degrees negative camber because of the rear springs, or partly because of the rear springs. But now that should be reinstated back within factory spec, which is what, 2 degrees, is it? Something like that. But yeah, I'm going to find out about that in a later episode. Obviously, it will need setting up again, but yeah, the rear camber should be now fixed, or it should be drastically improved. So there's only one thing left to do, and that is to give this thing a test ride, and I'll give you my opinion, which I think is better, the Koni Sport shocks with the Eibach springs or with the OEM specification springs. Just before we do that, this is how the car looks before with the Eibach springs. As you can see, it looks a lot more squatted in the rear, and this is how it looks now. I think it looks much better. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. But for now, let's get this thing out on the road. Let's see how she handles. Okay guys, so first impressions. Yeah, it's a lot less crashy. Strangely, it still feels firm. It's still very firm, but it's a lot less crashy. Woohoo! It makes me smile every time. Oh, I don't think I've driven this car in maybe, what, 2 weeks? Maybe 3? No, I think it's about 2 weeks. Oh, it makes me smile every single time without fail. It just makes me giggle. Oh, it really is. It's fantastic. Yes, it's nowhere near as crashy. Or should I say, no, it's nowhere near as crashy. Strangely enough, it's still just as firm, or feels just as firm. But as I say, it has been a couple of weeks since I've driven this car. But it doesn't feel anywhere near as crashy. Already it feels more compliant, particularly in the rear. I think I need to soften up the front shocks a little bit. At the moment I've got the rear shocks on full soft, but yeah, there is a noticeable difference. So I'm just about to turn left on a notoriously bumpy country road. This road was the decider for me last time, the decider to change my springs, because it is a very bumpy country road. Last time the rear arches were scrubbing the tyres. Let's find out what it's like now. Oh, here's the bumpy bit. Yeah, it does go up and down a lot. There's no scrubbing. Oh, it's so much better. It is so much better when you get on roads like this. You know, on flat roads there wasn't a massive amount of difference, but on this road, oh yeah, fantastic. Yes, yes, what a difference. I can't believe that. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I wasn't so sure at first. Yes, it was less crashy. You could feel it was a bit more compliant, but when you really get it on a road like this, wow, night and day, guys, night and day. All I will say is, if you guys, or any of you guys, have got the Eibachs fitted, experiencing the same issues I was experiencing, go back to OEM springs, guys. Really, really go back to OEM springs. You won't be disappointed. It handles so much better. I really mean that. It handles so much better. You won't be disappointed, take it from me. I think, you know, this coupled with the Alfaholics uprated anti-roll bar kit to take out a little bit of the excessive roll, which again these GTVs are notorious for, I think this would be an absolute weapon. I really, really do. But yeah, I'm absolutely ecstatic, chuffed to bits. Really, really am chuffed to bits. I really have, you know, I've made the right decision there. I'm falling over my own words. Yes, very, very happy. Very happy indeed. So yeah, this is a win for me, guys. I'm absolutely chuffed to bits, confident this is the absolute best thing to do for the car. People used to say GTVs are awesome at handling, and I used to think, well, that's nice because mine handles like absolute shite. Well, now it handles fantastic. Really, really does. Yes, yes. What a transformation. What a transformation. Oh, any of you guys who are not happy with the way your GTV is handling, and you have got Koni Sport adjustable dampers with the Eibach springs in the real world on the roads, guys, go back to OEM. That is my opinion. I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. I'm absolutely ecstatic. I really, really am ecstatic. What a transformation. So, as always, guys, thank you for watching. Welcome to all of my new subscribers. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. And as always, guys, I shall see you next time. Oh God.